Hello, 26 Threads participants, Expandibus fans, and Bay Area residents. This is Joshua Falcongray, and I am here co-hosting with Jamie Liu. Actually, I'll unmute you for a second, Jamie Liu, if you want to just say what's up. You're unmuted.
Thanks, Joshua. Hey, what's up?
Cool. Thank you. I'm going to mute you again, and yeah, I'm going to first just start off with the little event trailer to kind of get the ball rolling. So if you've already seen it, I guess you could skip this part of the recording, but yeah, hope you enjoy it.
I am one with the universal mind.
I am viewing
This thread at the perfect time in my life.
I am viewing
This thread at the perfect time in my life.
fear of the unknown is as old and as common as fear itself. The 26 threads are a tool, a guide with which I can intentionally shape my own narrative, thus creating the known out of the unknown. Creating the known out of the unknown by connecting the functions into a clearly defined structure of abilities. I will better harness all that I am and my ideal narrative and actual narrative will merge. That's right. My ideal narrative and my actual narrative will merge as humanity proceeds into the future. The restructuring of our minds has become more critical than ever. Yes, the time is now. We must prioritize. We must prioritize the importance of progress. As I consider the possibilities of my own narrative, they unfold in real time before my eyes. In real time before my eyes. And I want to change the way in which I use my brain.
I am one with the universal mind.
Okay, cool. I gotta figure out how to stop that. All right, thank you so much for watching the trailer. Let me just make sure. Putting some music on for myself in the background. Cool, so thank you for hopping on and enjoying the trailer with me. As the trailer mentioned, 26 Threads is a system. And as you can tell, there's a bit of a story to it. And yeah, it's quite a decadent event. So I'm going to switch over the screen sharing to the itinerary for this webinar. So much technology involved here. Cool. So here's the itinerary. So the event, as I mentioned, has a lot of components to it. It has story, it has archetypes, it has sound healing, it has cannabis, it has breathwork. And 26 Threads is something that has been in the progress for several years. Actually, footage from that trailer came from probably, I don't know, 3 or maybe even like 4 years ago. So yeah, it's been around for a while, and I was able to finally use that footage, which I've been sitting with as this project has been in development. And yeah, so let's go to the first part, story. So story of 26 Threads is really because human consciousness is created in stories. And so I've been formally trained in filmmaking at film school, and I learned all about story structure, the 3-act structure, beginning, middle, and end. And this is not something that comes from just film. This is the way that human consciousness is laid out. So, if you go to the grocery store, let's say, you prepare to go to the grocery store, you're at the grocery store, you come back from the grocery store. So everything that we do has that natural 3-act structure. There's the intro, the body, you could say, and then the sort of climax, I got my groceries, or I didn't get my groceries, I forgot my debit card, whatever it is. And then, the resolution is, you come back and it is what it is. So with human consciousness, a lot of our unresolved stories is what causes suffering. So the idea that our incomplete stories are still being played out and projected into everyday life is the root of all of our anguish, our emotional pain. So part of the reason story is involved here is because we want to bring some completions to unconscious stories for everybody, and this is why it's so powerful. So the 26 Threads story, I'm not going to get too into it right now. I want you to experience it in person, but as the narrator in that video mentioned, a lot of it is based on your ideal narrative merging with your current narrative so that you can sculpt the narrative of your own life. And you could say, another way of saying that is getting in touch with your future self. So yeah, it should be awesome. So next up is archetypes. So what are archetypes? Carl Jung is, I think, the creator of the word archetypes, and he did a lot of Eastern religion studies and stuff, like the I Ching in the many years ago. And I don't know the years exactly. And so I've been a big fan of Carl Jung's work, and so they're called Jungian archetypes. And he uses from him, I've been using a set of 12 archetypes. There is the innocent, the orphan, the lover, the seeker, the caregiver, the warrior, the ruler, king, queen, the magician, the fool. And so my personal favorite, even though everyone contains all archetypes within them, my personal superpower archetype is the magician, because the magician is the archetype which transcends archetypes, or is the archetype that knows archetypes exist. So Carl Jung was, in discovering and kind of laying out the archetypes, Carl Jung was the magician role. And so that's sort of the role that I feel gravitated toward as well. And so the magician archetype is, I guess I could look at the magician archetype is the one that 26 threads is kind of embodying, and that's what we're all being asked to embody in doing this event. So then, what are the threads themselves? So this is a little bit of the mystery of the story also, but I'll tell you that the threads are involving the archetypes, and we likely will not get through all of the threads for this event. So this is sort of an intro to the story world, and simply because to get through all of them would take more hours than we have. But the threads are a system created by a character in the story. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. And next up is the sound healing discussion. A little bit about what is sound healing is the topic of that. So I need to figure out how to unmute Jamie Lou to explain that, unless Jamie Lou, if you're able to unmute yourself.
Oh, there we go.
There you go, thanks. I can hear you.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joshua. Hi, everyone. So I'll just say a few words about myself and how I'm going to participate in this wonderful adventure we're going to have, which sounds really cool, Joshua.
Yeah.
So I'm a vibrational healer, and I work with essentially the power of sound and light to positively affect the human energy field. And this is all done through healing frequencies. And that's the sound that comes through sacred instruments that I use, like crystal bowls, as well as my voice. And these healing frequencies, they have a profound effect on the human mind, in that they can deactivate the fight and the flight and the freeze response, right? The everyday noise and stress that we often endure and are bombarded with. And what's really nice about these healing frequencies, they don't have the ability to deactivate the fight and flight, but they can activate the 80% of the brain that we do not usually use. And that can lead to a really, really profound experience during the sound journey. Yeah, and we also use healing frequencies to essentially raise the vibration of those who are participating, who are receiving the frequencies. And this activates our body's natural ability to heal, because we're in such a relaxed state, such a state where we are energetically aligned with the universal mind, as the video had illustrated. But yeah, the universal mind is really the vibration of peace, of just ultimate peace and bliss. And this is what we'll get aligned to through the use of, through the aid of the healing frequencies, and in, in context of this journey. So it feels and sounds just really strong, really, really strong. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. And yeah, I just also want to mention that Jamie Lou brings forth some specific energies of Kuan Yin and light language is what she and many others call it. I don't know if you want to touch onto those as well.
Oh yes. The frequency of love. So anything less than the frequency of love will fall away through the energetic presence and sounds that are essentially channeled through me. And Kuan Yin is one of those ascended masters, these awakened beings that tends to come through a lot in the sound journeys. So it's just immense. It's just like being hugged and being loved by the Divine Mother herself. It's really such a beautiful experience and really potent, very supportive for healing. There are also many beings of love and light that come through to support. I never know until we get into it.
Mm.
And the light language is also really beautiful, and light language serves to speak to our soul essentially, and to speak to what hurts within the soul, because that's the stuff that can be hard to look at, to peel away the layers and really look at. So I love how this journey, is really supporting a very easy and safe space to do some deep healing processes.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I just want to invite anybody who, if you have a question for Jamie Lou or for myself, feel free to click the raise your hand button, and I'm sure either of us would be happy to answer any questions. And yeah, Jamie Lou, I'm just basking in what you're bringing just to this meeting, so thank you so much for everything.
Thank you, Joshua. Yeah, happy to take questions too.
Cool. Thank you. So I will, I'll mute you for now, and let me know if you have anything else, or I guess you've already muted yourself. Let me know if you have anything else you'd like to add, and I really appreciate it.
Can you hear me?
Is this Adriana?
Yes.
Hi, how are you? I haven't talked to you, I haven't heard your voice in a while. You have a question for Jamie Lou?
Ooh, I just knocked down my cereal, but there was nothing in it. Okay. My camera doesn't really work too well, so.
That's okay.
Anyways, it's so great to listen to what you both are saying, and I feel like these are things that I have also studied and have been so passionate about, and it's just so nice to hear. Usually I'm, telling people about it, or I gave a workshop on the science of sound healing, like probably 5 workshops at different times and at a festival. Someone asked me to do it, and I was like, okay. So for a few weeks I really studied it and really dove deep into it, and we touched up on different frequencies that heal, and how all of our organs have different frequencies, and just a real kind of the science and the ancient the modern and the ancient sound healing coming together, and how science proves some of the ancient things, and the free, just everything from how Wi-Fi is around us all the time, and just really kind of putting sound healing in a kind of way of thinking that you can actually touch it. There's a Wi-Fi, that's a frequency, that's something that isn't healing, opposed to knowing the frequencies of your organs and the crystal bowls, and how that's healing, and the vibration of the earth, and it's just the most amazing thing ever. And it's just so great that you guys are coming together to share that with people, because it's and I'm not going to be in San Francisco, because I will be in New York, because that's where I live, but I wish I could be here, and I think it's just so great you're doing it. I'm so happy to be here, and I love learning, so whatever you have to share. I was just taking some notes on, Carl Jung. I want to, learn about that, and, research that. And it's so cool. And I think it's so great to, and just thinking of different ways that I, am still listening and realizing the different ways that I really do need to heal after, ending my business, ending my relationship, even being in a new place, patterns of thinking, how I feel interacting with new friends or new men, or just how it feels to be solo, and also being at Burning Man solo and no art project. So it's everything I was familiar with doing there was now different. So That's a very like exploratory place where I'm alone for hours and I'm thinking. So, I'm very like, oh wow, everything you're saying, I could definitely see how exploring that would really open up a lot of healing portals.
Yeah, and just mentioning Burning Man, all the stuff you're talking about, I think you're speaking for a lot of the participants in the Bay Area, and I think it's just perfect that you said all of that stuff. So much appreciated. Do you have maybe a question for Jean Yulu or for myself, and or you just wanted to share that?
Yeah. Okay. So, you're going to continue right now talking more about the workshop, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm just excited to really just hear more of what you have to say.
Okay, cool.
And if I have any questions, then I'll let you know. But basically, every question that popped into my head, you basically answered it or right afterwards. And I didn't even know that I had the question.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds good. And if you could find the raise your hand button for.
I was looking for it. I can't find it, but I just actually wanted to do it because I thought it was fun.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, it is fun. So I think the raise your hand button is in the side panel or something.
Oh, participants. Okay. I had to click on the participants.
Yeah, exactly.
And then this little panel popped up.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, got it.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was great hearing your voice, and I shall see you later today.
Okay, bye.
Okay, bye-bye. Cool. Okay, I just muted you, Andriana. So next, I'm going to share my itinerary screen again. Share screen, webinar notes. Okay. Actually, let me try that again. Share screen, notes. Okay. So here we go. Next up is cannabis. Okay, so cannabis is, we'll say, allowed here. I'm not going to recommend it for anyone who is afraid or hasn't used it before. This is an optional component for people who feel that they are versed in the usage of, I don't like to say usage, but in the merging of the spirit of cannabis. And for people who have some familiarity with what it's like to use cannabis, because really, this is an Expandibus event. I'll just type that because it's a word I made up, so I want to make sure you're clear on it. So Expandibus is, the idea of Expandibus is about using cannabis as a healing tool and a consciousness expansion ally. And the real issue that I've seen in the cannabis industry and how people do use cannabis, which is different for me than merging with the spirit of cannabis, because cannabis, or at least the THC component, is a feminine energy. And so the way that THC in cannabis is often objectified in our world today is a similar unconscious way in which all feminine is objectified in today's culture. And so bringing awareness to what that means and being able to honor it as a sacred medicine as opposed to using her or just wanting to get stoned. That's why the Expandibus slogan is now leaving the stoner age, because it can really take us to extremely beautiful, deep places of healing, and it's not simply a recreational tool. It's not just another alternative to alcohol or something. It's actually a strong psychedelic when it's used in the way that we're going to be using it here. So yeah, it's very precious topic to me, because I've had so many incredible experiences transcending who I thought I was using this medicine, and I've also had addictive experiences with it, and I've had usage and objectification experiences with it. So I know how that goes as well. And so some of you might be wondering, what is the best strain of cannabis to be using? And this is really optional. I'm going to be bringing a couple of vaporizing, cartridges myself, so that you can use mine. That's included in the event if you'd like. I'm going to bring, I think, an indica, a sativa cartridge, and a hybrid. So you are welcome to use whatever you want. Some people get tired from indica. If that's the case with you, I would recommend not using indica if it makes you tired. Sativa can cause more thoughts, more thinking to happen. So I can, sorry, I'm getting some chats here. So if sativa is something that you don't experience is going to make you overthink, then that works. So it's really your own preference. And oh, gotcha. I didn't realize you were hearing my music in there earlier. Okay, just reading the chats now. So yeah, if you have any questions, if you haven't used cannabis before, probably this is not the best time to start. So if you don't know anything about the strains, maybe kind of figure that out on your own in advance. So then next is talking about electrolytes. So I'm actually going to bring a bottle of electrolytes. It's a brand called, what's the brand? Trace Minerals, and it's a product called 40,000 volts. And I'm going to bring that. So why that's important is because using cannabis dehydrates people. And so probably a lot of people who are going to attend this event are already cannabis users. And so probably a lot of these people, you who may be listening, are going to be dehydrated. And so electrolytes are the, you could say it's what makes water conductive. And so the more electrolytes water has, the more conductive it is, and the more the electrical signals of our body can move throughout our body. So I'm going to be offering electrolytes, particularly cannabis depletes magnesium, which is some people call it the relaxation mineral. And so that's one of the most important electrolytes that's in this mix, but it's an entire collection of different electrolytes. So yeah, I'm going to be bringing that, and I will also be recommending that you get your own if you're a regular cannabis user outside of that as well. So next, I'm going to talk about breath work. So hey Marcus, how's it going? I'm just going to mute you there if you don't mind.
Absolutely. How you doing?
Cool, good brother. Nice to see you.
You too.
Cool, I'm going to mute you here. Cool, so next, breath work. And what I like to say, sort of philosophically, spiritually speaking, we are, in my opinion, we are the breath. So every time we breathe, that experience of how much of me is present in the room is how much breath is present. And so breath is a crucial thing to spiritual self-realization and becoming more embodied. And so it's something that the bigger we can breathe, the more deeply we can breathe, the more deeply, I'm trying to make this sound like it's not scientific, but in my view, the more alive we are, the more present we are. And so if you even go to a chiropractor or something like that, actually Marcus, who just showed up, is a chiropractor, the more muscles and the more of our spine is engaged with the breath, the further along we are in our healing process. So breath is, to me, the symptom of and the activator of everything. So the Expandibus method itself is a small piece of what we're doing, and it's actually getting into uncomfortable energies and getting into a little bit of the wounding and then laughing into it. And it can be very weird at first because, like, how can I laugh at something that's not funny? I do it all the time. It's something that I've trained myself to do, just to be able to laugh when I need to, when I want to, because it's a huge relief energetically, and it's also a form of moving grief out of the body. If you notice, laughter and sobbing, crying are really similar. They just, one has tears and the other one doesn't, but it's essentially the same thing coming at the release from different angles. So laughter therapy is a thing, laughter yoga is a thing, and so combining laughter into this experience along with the breath work, there will be times when something funny happens spontaneously, or something is designed to be funny in the story, and so laughter is going to be a natural part of this experience, which is my favorite part personally. And so speaking of breath, some of you may have heard of the phenomenon of tetany. And tetany is when, let's say, a lot of people have never experienced tetany, so it's interesting to explain. But after breathing for a long time, a lot of energy starts to move through us because breath, like food, contains energy or prana. And so the more breath we take in conscious high doses, it's like swallowing energy. And so we get supercharged with this prana, this high vibrational, I try not to say energy too much, but it's a very high vibrational energy. And so when that happens, it's like, if you imagine that our body is like a light bulb, and the circuit can only handle so much energy before it starts to move beyond what the circuit is accustomed to handling. And so the nervous system starts to experience its maxing out. It gets to the max point of like, wow, this is more energy than I have any memory of handling. And so tetany, I'm assuming you can see my camera, tetany is like this experience usually in the hands and the wrists, where the hands start to curl and the hands kind of get like this because so much energy is moving through. It starts to touch upon the wounding, the emotional wounding in the hands. And hands are very symbolic of exchange and giving, receiving, doing. A lot of our life is expressed through our hands. And so for whatever reason, this is where a lot of people feel discomfort, and it's normal, and it is something that actually gets worked through sometimes during the breathwork session and can go away in the same session, or it could last until the end of the session, or it might not happen at all. For some people, it just doesn't happen. Or maybe it happens after 5 sessions or something. Sometimes it takes a while to get to that point. So I just want to let you know that that is something that may happen. It's totally normal. Your hands will go back to normal, but it's kind of like a cramp. And think of it like a cramp. And that's also something that electrolytes will help with you're less likely to cramp up when you have proper electrolytes. So preventing that is part of the reason for the electrolytes. So yeah, let's go on to the next part. This is one of those things that we need to talk about in order to just cover all our bases. And this may not be relevant to anybody, but it is something that needs to be talked about. So contraindications, and that doesn't necessarily mean you can't participate because all of these things have different sort of ways that we would deal with it. But some of these things are genuine contraindications, things that we would want to talk about the best way to participate if you're going to participate at all, if you have one of these conditions. So if you're aware of a serious mental or emotional disorder, please let us know, and we can talk about, your current status and if the event is right for you, and that there's no judgment or anything. We've all been through, very, very intense situations, so please just let us know. High blood pressure, because this can be a very high emotionally charged experience. So blood pressure is something that we do need to be aware of. History of aneurysms, history of heart attacks or heart disease, myocarditis, arterial fibrillation, if you have a history of epileptic seizures, grand mal seizures, any kind of epilepsy, please let us know. Doesn't mean you can't do it, we just need to know. Similarly, if you have HIV or AIDS, doesn't mean you can't do it, we just need to know about it. Asthma or any other constriction of the bronchial tubeways, or any similar conditions to any of those things, please just make sure that we're aware. So so we're kind of getting toward the end here. Something I'm just gonna go out of order a little bit, just to make sure that everybody is properly hydrated, and like I talked about, the electricity flowing through the body properly, the tetany, all that. We need to make sure that you're well hydrated. So please bring water. And I'm just going to add right now, I thought of it during the preview actually. Please bring a notebook, and we'll be able to set some intentions. We'll be able to talk about how we can make the most of sculpting the narrative of our own life. And we can do that by writing it down, because our thumb is connected to our brain, and we'll be able to more consciously intend by writing. And we'll be adding the electrolytes to your water. It's a liquid supplement, so you're probably not going to want to drink it straight up, so dilute it in the water. And some things you might want to bring is a grounding mat, because this is San Francisco, so there's probably 30 different places with Wi-Fi coming at you, and so being grounded is ideal. You can check out earthing.com for grounding supplies. I made my own. If you're not familiar with grounding, it is just being connected to like the ground somewhere. So we would like literally connect a mat to the grounding plug of an outlet at the center, where the center SF is where the event is the venue. And if you're able to do that, I recommend it. It reduces inflammation and stuff like that, since we're in an urban area. And then lastly, please consider bringing a detox binder, because in this process, because of both what Jamie Liu is doing and the process of what I'm doing, and the breath work and the story and all this stuff is going to release toxins. And so in order to get those toxins effectively out of your system, I recommend bringing either activated charcoal in powder form or pill form, or bentonite clay or zeolite clay. I like bentonite clay. if you have any questions about how these work or why you would use them, feel free to let me know. They grab onto heavy metals, they grab onto mold in your body, candida, whatever needs to leave your body, because that's the purpose of this, is it's going to release a lot of emotional toxins and with that physical debris. And so this just helps make it a more effective session so it genuinely improves your life. And then, lastly, I'm going to just mention the Cannabis Facebook groups, which have not been super active so far, and they're going to be more active very soon, especially if you join. There's the Cannabis support room. It's not what it's called. I can include a link to it with the posting of this webinar. And then there's the Inward Training Lab, which is going to cost money in the future. Right now it's free because I'm just building up the content and stuff like that. So take advantage of that. That's more like kind of hour-long training similar to this one. And the support one is more like ongoing discussion. I can't stop smoking cannabis, or I'm looking for an answer how to deal with this kind of pain, or whatever it is, and just like that's more of a community room. So that's about all I have. We're 45 minutes in, so if anybody has any questions about anything we talked about for either myself or for Jamie Lou, feel free to raise your hand, and that should be under the participants section of your tab. Okay, Dan raised his hand, so I'm going to unmute Dan. And
hey, Joshua, can you hear me okay?
Hey, Dan, yeah, I can. How's it going?
Good. Thanks again, to both you and Jamie for putting this informational webinar on. It's definitely been, interesting kind of hearing a little bit more details. So my question is regarding, some of the aspects of the archetypes and the story and the ego. And you said something yesterday in the video you posted promoting the event that was really resonated with me regarding, bringing these stories to an end. And I guess the part of that resonated with me is, in a lot of my own, journey and experience so far is as our ideas of ourselves, the concepts of ourselves, the stories of ourselves begin to fall away, there's not really a story thread that's sitting there anymore that feels like it's pulling on you. I was just kind of curious if you could speak to the archetypes and the story and the ego, and that sense of being, just kind of from your experience and what your thoughts on that are.
Sure, cool. Thanks for asking. So I'll just leave you unmuted in case, so we can kind of just have a conversation since we got the time.
Okay.
And if you want to mute yourself, feel free.
Okay.
So I'll give you one of my favorite examples is the caregiver archetype. And this is quite honestly something that I'm still experiencing aspects of today, or fragments. I'm finding fragments of the undeveloped caregiver archetype today. And in other words, there's the shadow and the gift aspect of all archetypes. And you could say, if you look at anything that's bothering us in life, there's the shadow and the gift versions of it. There's the lower vibration and the higher vibration. So, for example, anger is a shadow, lower vibration of passion. Once you add what I read in a book once, a drop of joy. Once you add a drop of joy to anger, the higher vibration of it is passion. And so similarly with the caregiver archetype, what I've experienced a lot in my life is this idea of martyrdom, where I am dutifully caregiving past my own boundaries to a degree that I'm no longer comfortable with, and I'm doing it in order to, at that point, get approval. And I'm no longer doing it because I'm genuinely wanting to caregive. And so the higher vibration of that is, of course, just being compassionate and having clear boundaries of like, you know, I've given everything that I feel I'm genuinely able to give, and so the way to raise that caregiver vibration, which I've personally experienced a lot, and it's very common in certain, I'll say, lineages, is developing the warrior archetype. So my personal path has been in developing the warrior. You know, going to kung fu, doing more physical exercise. You know, this morning I did intense sprinting because I'm getting into what they call burst training, physical exercise, and just developing that warrior archetype is what the shadow caregiver is missing, because the shadow caregiver doesn't have any boundaries until the warrior archetype is developed in order to create those boundaries. And so all of these archetypes are linked in certain ways. Like I mentioned, the gift of the magician is being able to move between archetypes and knowing that archetypes exist. And then the shadow of the magician is being addicted to moving between archetypes, and actually being addicted to cannabis is a shadow of the magician. And so being able to stick into one reality and be here presently is the ruler archetype, the king, queen. And so when we develop the magician, or if we want to develop the magician more consciously, we want to transcend realities more intentionally, then it takes the development of the ruler archetype so that we can come more into contact with our kingdom and take ownership of our kingdom. And one of the funny things actually about the ruler archetype is the shadow of the ruler is control, and the gift of the ruler is also control. And I think that's just so cool. I think that's so telling, because there are such subtle ways to use control out of scarcity, and to use control out of abundance. I'm going to control, where I'm going today because I have the abundant choices of where I want to go. Or I'm going to control my partner because my partner is making me feel uncomfortable, and punishing them into submission is going to make me feel better, which is obviously the shadow. So yeah, each archetype is very linked to the others and has a lot of dynamicism with each person's personality. And actually, just touching upon that, one of my favorite ways to look at a personality is like a mixing board. If you've seen, like, track 1, track 2, track 3, track 4, guitar, drums. So the way that I see people's personalities being expressed in the world, and just purely energetically, is through the mixing of what archetypes are they resonating with. So we talked, Jamie Liu mentioned earlier, Kuan Yin is one of the ascended masters, and so each pure energy like that has its own preferences of archetypes. So, like, Jamie Liu, feel free to correct me if you like. Kuan Yin is probably queen, caregiver, lover archetypes very strong, and then is probably not going to be so focused on the fool or the orphan And so there's different preferences, and then on top of the natural preference, and so if you think of each of ourselves like an ascended master in training, so we're each going to have different natural preferences that our soul urge brings us toward archetypes being expressed. Even though we contain them all, we're going to have preferences just naturally. But then on top of that, our ego, which is not a bad word, is just our trauma, you could say, the aspect of our ego which is unconscious, is trying to express archetypes that we don't naturally resonate with because the ego thinks it should. And so, for example, if we're naturally, if as our ascended master self is naturally, for me, wanting to express the warrior, but my ego thinks I should express, let's say, the fool, and I don't feel that it's and I'm doing it for attention, I'm doing it for validation, whatever it is. If I'm pulled in two different directions, my natural expression and my woundings expression, I'm out of integrity, and it creates suffering. So yeah, I think that's a pretty robust explanation of the archetypes. Dan, does that kind of, I'll just unmute you for a second if you don't mind. Dan, does that kind of answer your question so that you can get a better feel for how we're using those archetypes?
Yeah, no, that definitely adds a little bit of clarity to, you know, the idea of an archetype, a persona, whatever construct or concept you want to apply to help kind of, you know, sift through those deeper aspects of yourself that you might be unaware of. So if I'm understanding you properly, these archetypes are, you know, and I'm not using this in a negative connotation, a construct or a concept that kind of helps people navigate the different expressions of themselves that just kind of naturally arise, and figuring out what's actually resonating and what's, you know, the egoic aspects of yourself. Sorry about the noise.
That's okay.
You know, that can pull you in a few different directions. So if I'm understanding you properly, this workshop will help kind of explore those different archetypes, personas, and you know, is that more or less? No, that's kind of what I was hearing from what you were getting at.
Cool.
Oh, okay, you're shaking your head. Sorry.
Yeah. I have said I had unstable internet connection, so might have missed something. But
okay, no, that definitely helped to address my question.
Cool. I'll just keep you unmuted for a second. The sound's not too bad, so I'll just converse with you for a second. So there are a bunch of different systems. You know, if you look at ascended masters, like, you know, there's you know, Jesus, there's Buddha, there's you know, Melchizedek, there's like all kinds of ascended masters, and they all have their different flavors and strengths. And so that's one system which you could look at you know, our personalities with. And then the archetype system that we're using here, the 12 archetypes, is another system. And there are other systems of archetypes which use completely different archetypes. There are personality tests which say, you know, you're a INTP, or you're a rebel, or you're, you know, whatever it is. And so this is just a archetypal system that I really resonate with and I know really well. And it doesn't mean it's the right one or it's the wrong one or whatever. It's just one that I feel is very potent and effective and powerful. And I've created a story around it. And then also, I kind of forgot. I think you might have had another question there, but.
Oh, yeah. No, you definitely addressed the question that I had. It was just kind of, you know, getting your perspective on how, you know, the utility of using this type of system interacts with, you know, the concept of ourself and our ego. And you definitely did a really good job of explaining, at least to me, clearly, where you're coming from and getting at with this. So, no, thank you for taking the time to answer that question.
Okay, cool. And then one more thing I just want to mention, I wouldn't necessarily call it a workshop as much as an experience, because because it's like what I really intend is for for you to be your own facilitator, and Jamie Lou and I are kind of just creating a vibrational swimming pool for you to be in, but then you get to experience whatever you experience in that. So we're really looking to sort of prime you with vibrations and story elements, but then you are the main character in the story, and the purpose is to empower you. And so in a certain way, you're the leader of the workshop. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And I haven't read through all of your event descriptions very carefully, but the way you just described it, I thought was a very clear, concise description of the experience you're crafting and how people are individually, facilitating themselves through that experience. Yeah, that was a really great description. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan. Yeah, really excited. And cool. Yeah, so I feel like good, like we have covered a lot. Does anybody else have any other questions before we wrap up? And I'll just chill for a second to see if anyone pops up. Otherwise, thank you so much for showing up and for participating in this work. Every time, I just want to add, every time I do one of these Expandibus ceremonies, it levels me up too, and I have profound healing experiences too. So this is also a journey that I'm on, and the powerful beings that kind of work through me are teaching me a lot in these experiences as well. And so I'm just right on board with you, and you're my facilitators too. And this is just a group empowerment event. So thank you so much. I'm going to give you all opportunity to say goodbye. I'll just unmute everybody real quick, and then we'll hang out. All right,
thanks, Joshua.
Bye. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Have a great rest of your day. Much love. Bye-bye.
Bye.